Well, it's martini time again. I hope you've had a good day. It rained here several times today, and so all the grass and the plants are going, so nice, so nice. And so anyway, I've been wanting to talk about something today. I wrote a piece on it on my Facebook, and it's on my blog. To Kill a Minotaur.com, and it was the anatomy of a compulsion. And the title of this, I just wrote it, was The Divine Compulsion. Now, that's interesting, the divine compulsion. How could a compulsion be divine? Well, I only have 30 minutes. I forgot to put my watch on. So, anyway, so we'll do a timeless talk. And I really got a clue to this back when I was watching some time ago the movie Spotlight, which is about the Boston Globe's investigation into the pedophilia of the Catholic Church. And one of the reporters was interviewing a priest who had been caught. And he said quite innocently, it wasn't a sin because I didn't get any pleasure in it. So it really stuck in my mind because in his mind he hadn't sinned. Of course, that's rationalization. But how is this possible? So I've been doing a lot of my own personal work on myself is trying to understand the double bind. Now, a double bind is a situation where there are two imperatives, two commandments that must be obeyed. Two commandments that must be obeyed, but they are opposite. They are contradictory. So you can't do them both at the same time. A good example would be the parent tells the child, try to be spontaneous, or try to smile. Well, of course, for the child, smiling is spontaneous. So when the child tries to smile, it looks like, As a photographer, I had to undo a lot of those smiles. Stop trying, you see. So that's a commandment. Those are two commandments. Try to be spontaneous. Try to be spontaneous. So, see, they're contradictory. There are many double binds like this, where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. That's what the double bind means. It's lose-lose. Whatever you do, you're screwed. But you have to obey the commandments. Zen is all about this. Zen koan. Here's a Zen koan. If you call these symbols, you're wrong. If you say these are not symbols, you're wrong. If you say they are symbols, you're right. Now, which is it? You choose, or I'll punish you. If you say this is a stick, you're wrong. If you say it isn't a stick, you're right. You're wrong. In other words, whatever you say is wrong. But you have to choose. So that's a dilemma. That's a dilemma. Now, when we get into these existential commandments, we get into an existential dilemma. So the only way to get out of an existential dilemma is to create a behavior that unifies the two opposites. It transcends the opposites and it includes them. So you get to eat your cake and keep it. That's the point. So when you have a dilemma, you can't, a double binding dilemma, you can't have your cake and eat it too. They cancel out each other. But you have to obey both. That's the important thing. You have to obey both simultaneously. Because the divine commandment of the universe is let there be one. there must be one. You see, you can't have, the universe can't be two. Your mind can't be two. That's schizophrenia or dual personality. So the mind has to be one, no matter how it has to be. America has to be one. Restore America means restore America to its unity. So everything must be one, you see. This must be one. It can't be this and an orange at the same time. It has to be this. This is the one, you see. So the commandment that must be obeyed is there must be one. But now we have a double commandment that contradicts. So there's two commandments. But there must be one. So this is a compulsion. We have to have one, but we can't because the commandments are contradictory. When the commandment is a simple thing, go do that, you go do it. You see? But when the commandments contradict each other and you have to obey them, it creates a split. It divides the mind. It divides the self, you see, into two conflicting choices. Usually when this happens, I know what happens to me, when my wife gives me an ambiguous message, instruction, and I don't know which one to go, and I go into an oscillation. Wah, 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 wah. It's a feedback loop. You stick a microphone up against an amplifier, wah, 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 wah. You see, that happens when you can't choose, because when we choose ourselves. That's what choice is all about. You say you want an orange or you want an apple. Okay, well I choose the apple, so that I choose myself. Then the choice creates me. But when these double bind comes in, if you choose, you can't choose one or the other because they are mutually dependent. This, for instance, right here, for this to work, this is really one instrument. It's not two. You see, it doesn't work with one. It's two. You see. So, I lost my thread. Let me have a drink. Wait a minute. So, getting back to Spotlight. So, what is the double bind in the Catholic Church? Well, one commandment that has to be obeyed is be your nature. Be who you are. Be your human nature. Well, the human nature is sexual. The other commandment is be a priest. That's your vocation. The priest is celibate. So now you got a commandment to be sexual and a commandment to be celibate. How can you, if you obey one, the other one haunts you? You see, they're mutually dependent. So, if you choose celibacy, you have to repress your sexuality. If you choose your sexuality, you lose your vocation. I'd rather get married. So how do you do both and maintain your vocation? Well, what happens is that if you choose, if you have sex with young boys, well, then you get to satisfy the sexual command, and you are not having sexual pleasure with women. So you remain your celibacy. It's like a Catholic girl I once knew who, in order to maintain her virginity, which was a Catholic commandment, she took it in the butt. So she got to have sex, and she also kept her virginity. Ta-da! Problem solved. You see? So this becomes, now here's the point that I've discovered. Here's the point that I've discovered. Is that when you come up with a solution to the dilemma, for a moment, there is a unity and a resolution of the pain of the dilemma. You see, these dilemmas are excruciatingly painful because they split the self. There's nothing more painful than be self-divided in a civil war against yourself. You see, people commit suicide for this, because of this, to get out of this. That's why people get the idea of suicide. The idea unifies the split, so it becomes a compulsion. They can't let it go. So when you get the single idea that unifies but transcends but includes, both opposite, transcends but includes, a single idea that transcends but includes both commandments, there is temporary relief and energy. So when the Civil War is ended, there is tremendous energy and unification and peace. However, it's temporary. So the double bind comes back. So you have to do it again. And then there's peace. And then the double bind comes back. The split comes back. So you have to do it again. Now you have a compulsion. Now you have a ritual compulsion. There's a compulsive to ritually do the action in order to satisfy the split in the self, the double bind, but it doesn't last. You see, so it's a temporary thing. So you have to keep going back. So I look at this and I say, this is where compulsion starts, and this is where ritual behavior starts, where I can't help myself. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop it. That's what a compulsion is. You can't stop it. You may repress it, you may fight it, but it pops up, boom. It's like cigarettes. Cigarettes is a compulsion. You see. So there's a temporary relief when you smoke the cigarette from the tension of not having the cigarette. But then it comes back. And then you repress it. And you may succeed for a while. But then when you relax, boom, the compulsion comes up and you find yourself doing it unconsciously. What the hell, I'm smoking. Oh, you see? So this anatomy of a compulsion, and here's where I make a leap and call it the divine compulsion. Because when the commandment of God is let there be one, and this is right in the Bible, Yahweh says, let there be one, no God with no second. Let there be one God. Let there be unity, wholeness. Let there be the one, you see. This is not an abstraction. Let there be one universe, not two. Let there be one mind, not two. Let there be one you, not two. Let there be one is leveled out in every dimension. And there must be one. That's why countries, well, right now, we're caught up in it right now. South and North Korea. Let there be one Korea. But there's two. And as long as there's two, there's going to be tension. And it will come to the point where it explodes unless there's a creative solution. There's only two ways to go when you have a double binding dilemma. Either total violence or a creative idea that transcends and includes. So that would be like a new Korea that included both. Our Civil War. The new America included both North and South. However, we're still fighting it. There's still a tension, you see. It wasn't completely resolved. What's the divine compulsion? Well, the divine compulsion is to be one. One self. One world. One is the divine compulsion. So when we have an idea, a single idea, that transcends and includes the dilemma, that is a divine commandment to be one, you see. But it's perverted. It's not, it's the imitation. It's the imitation of God. It's the imitation of the divine commandment to be one. Our whole spiritual evolution, our journey of the soul is to be one. Is to be one, you see. So we're all involved in that, in being one. Whenever we feel split, divided against the world, there's a yearning, there's a drive to be one, which means to solve the split, to solve the dilemma, you see. And we all, I know everyone here, has some kind of compulsion to be one. It could be a compulsion to have an argument. It could be a compulsion to always be right. It could be a compulsion to, some habit, porn, sex, compulsion to pick on somebody, a compulsion to be a bully. There's a sex prison here in Nottoway County full of people with sex compulsions. You can't fix it. Because the compulsion is divine. The compulsion heals their soul. Because they don't understand, they haven't made it conscious. So this is the whole point of the spiritual practice. To make the unconscious conscious. So how do you make a compulsion conscious? Well, you have to go into it consciously. For instance, a cigarette compulsion. If you go into you see, the reason we have a compulsion to smoke is because it's unconscious. And we haven't seen the double binding, the lose-lose, why the cigarette solves the lose-lose dilemma. So, we have to make it conscious by being with it consciously as you do it. This is kind of like called tantra. It's going into the negative. In other words, you go into the sin consciously in order to make it whole. See, awareness is whole. The double bind in the compulsion is divided. So if the goal is to be one, if the commandment is to be one, the divine compulsion, the divine commandment is to be aware or conscious of the opposites in your nature. The inconsistencies in our lower nature is unconscious. So we have to make them conscious. But you can't do it through judgment and through repression or effort, or it has to be walking with it. So in the song, When Jesus Walks, that to me, that means Jesus as consciousness is walking with me in my double bind. And I am becoming conscious of my compulsion as I do it. And that shifts the commandment from let there be one through a compulsion to let there be one through awareness. And as I make my compulsion consciousness, the center has shifted to consciousness and off the ritual. You see, a compulsion is a ritual. And as a ritual, it's just a repeated karmic pattern, like Groundhog Day. The ritual repeats. Can't stop the ritual, because the ritual is not conscious. So we have to go into the ritual willingly. We have to go into the dark night willingly. We have to go into the dream willingly. We have to go in awake with the intention, I want to see what's going on. I want to watch. I want to look. And I'm going to follow it subtly. Every movement. I want to see it. Not blame it, not avoid it, not repress it. I want to see with it. So you actually invite the compulsion so you can make it conscious. And you discover that the compulsion begins to weaken as we withdraw identification from it. Identification goes to awareness. It's taken away from the compulsion. The compulsion goes weaker. And then it's gone. And all that energy that went into the compulsion is now free energy. It's awareness. It's joy. It's wholeness. So the divine compulsion is to restore unity by making your compulsions conscious. You see, by willingly going into the very thing you hate, by willingly going into the very patterns and rituals that give you so much guilt, you see. Because rituals, unconscious rituals, create guilt, because the guilt comes from turning away from our original wholeness. When we turn away from our original awareness, there's guilt. It's turning away from God. There's guilt, you see. So the compulsion is a mistaken way of turning away from God. That's why it's so powerful, because it feels like a divine commandment. I end up doing this. It just I just do it. I don't know why I do it. You see, I'm compulsion. I have to do it, you see, but I don't want to do it. But I have to, but I end up doing it. No matter what I do, I end up doing it. That's a compulsive ritual. We have to make these unconscious rituals conscious and bring our consciousness back from being held hostage in the compulsive rituals of our life. And they can be very small or very big. But if you look, they're all around. So, thanks for dropping in. See you in the morning.